I'm not sure if you know, but right now, this is the perfect market to get creative. Now, one of the creative options and creative offers that you can make sellers today is seller financing. You might ask, well, why would a seller not take cash, okay, and actually take my offer where they're not gonna get all of their money, they're simply gonna get payments for X amount of time. And in this video, I'm gonna share why or what are the benefits of seller financing to your sellers. Let's get into it. What's up, guys? It's your boy Sawan Belcher. This is me taking action. I'm a full-time real estate investor in Greensboro, North Carolina. We're actually in one of my houses right now. I'm dedicating this particular house as our new office. We should be moving in the next couple weeks. But look, today I wanted to talk to you about why some sellers will say yes to seller financing. So when you're on the phone with them, they're going through their scenario, you can actually hear, oh, well, this might be a good option for that seller. That this will, come back to your remembrance and say, well, let me say this to the seller so that way you guys can get more deals on the contract, own more houses, make more money, or assign more contracts, make more money. So the first reason that came to my mind when my student asked me this was taxes, okay? And just so you can understand, when a seller sells a house, let's just say that they want to sell the property for $100,000, okay? And let's just say, a cash buyer comes to them and says, great, I can pay $100,000. They go to closing, at an attorney's office. What that buyer has to do, he can't just bring $100,000 in cash in ones and lay it on the table. That's not how it works, okay? He has to wire or give a check to the closing attorney. The closing attorney puts that money into an escrow account, okay? So that escrow account almost like verifies the funds, make sure the funds are actually there, and on closing day, they send that money over to the seller, and that's the seller's proceeds, okay? Now, since that money had to go into the attorney's, bank account, the attorney has to account for this money at the end of the day when he files his taxes. Now, since he didn't get paid $100 grand, he actually just passed the $100 grand over to the seller. The attorney actually has to write out a 1099 to the seller, right? Which goes to the IRS. So the IRS knows that this seller just made an additional $100,000 this year. This is vital because if you look at the way the tax system works, okay, $10,000 or less, I think it's 10%. Then the next bracket is 12. Then it goes up to 14. Then it goes up to 27. And then lastly, like 35% on your taxes, depending on how much you make. So for the normal person in Greensboro, North Carolina, I believe that tax rate is about 14%. But if 14% is, I want to say it's between like, 20,000 and 40,000 or something like that. For that normal person that just got paid $100,000, that now bumped them up to another tax category of 35%. So instead of paying 14% taxes, now they have to pay 35% on their taxes for that year. So $100,000 doesn't really look like $100,000 when Uncle Sam comes knocking on your door during tax season, and instead of them getting a refund, they would then end up having to pay money out. And so for some sellers, that's a benefit. Now, you'll also have to understand when you're talking to this seller and you're explaining this, it's more of a perceived value or like a perceived concept. They don't know exactly how much they're gonna have to pay in taxes because there are tax loopholes. You don't know exactly how much that penalty is gonna be as well. You're just gonna have to use that in your negotiation so that way you can help the seller make a decision that seller financing is a good option for them. Next benefit is that technically they can make more, okay? When sellers sell for cash, in order for us as investors to buy for cash, we have to have a huge spread. Okay, now let me explain. Okay, so when a flipper goes to buy a property that they're going to rehab to resell, they have to make room for the purchase price, for the rehab, for the attorney fees on the close, for the interest rate on the money, for any mishap, utilities, dumpsters, insurance, property taxes, okay? And then they have to leave room for their profit, and then again, they have to leave even more room for the realtor that's gonna sell their property on the back end. Okay, so that's a lot of room. So a cash buyer needs a lot of room. So they almost have to buy it for a gross or ugly or, kind of turn my stomach kind of cash offer, right? But with a creative offer, I, as the buyer, I can pay more. For the seller, they can receive more because instead of having to come to the table with this grand number, they can actually come to the table with less but get more money over time. I hope that makes sense. Let me see if I can make this more real for you. Okay, let's just put it in the calculator. So let's just say hypothetically that we got a property that the ARV is like 150. I told the seller that I need to be at $65,000 cash. Okay, for whatever reason, they don't want that number. Okay, the property needs about $40,000 worth of work. So on a normal day, right, as a rehabber or a cash buyer, I'm coming in and I'm buying the property for $65,000. I'm putting $40,000 worth of work. I'm paying my private money guy 12%. I'm making room for all of these, utilities and insurance and property taxes and all that stuff. And then I'm making room for my profit and the realtor. I end up making about 35 grand on that deal. But the seller only receives 65,000 less, whatever fees they have at closing. I can also structure that same exact deal, okay? That same exact deal that I would have paid $65,000 cash for, that house will rent out, let's just call it a 3-1. I'm talking about a particular deal. I can't give you the address because I'm closing on it. That same particular deal, I could technically pay $100,000 for, okay? Let's do the math, okay? If I were to talk the seller into $100,000, hey man, look, I'll do $100,000, okay? If I were to talk them into allowing me to buy their house for $100,000 and breaking it up into equal payments because their property's paid off, okay? Breaking it up into equal payments, okay? And let's just call it for 20 years. So 20 years times 12 is $240. So $100,000 divided by 240. So my payment to them would be $416. That 3-bedroom, 1 bath, I probably could rent out for $1,200. So that deal right there for me could work out, okay? And for them, knowing that they don't have to bring any extra taxes, for them knowing that they're gonna get paid more than the original $65,000 that you offered, that might be beneficial for you and them. Because when you say break it up into equal payments and they say yes, they just agreed to 0% interest. They just agreed to no down payment, okay? Which is also one reason how and why they can get paid more. Because in this negotiation tool, in the seller financing game, there's so many different ways they can get paid, okay? It's your job to know all of the ways they can get paid, okay? So that way you can benefit off the negotiation more, okay? Just so you can understand, a down payment is one thing that's negotiable in a seller financing deal. The price is one thing that's negotiable in a seller financing deal. The interest rate, the term, whether it's a balloon or not, points on the front or the back, and no qualifying factors are all of the things, that can be negotiated, okay? I've even negotiated with seller financing that, hey, I owe you this money. I'm not gonna pay you a drop every month, but I will pay you when I sell the property. That is a benefit. That's a huge benefit to the seller and for you because of the perceived value that they can get paid more than a cash deal. Huge benefit right there, huge benefit. The next one is that they don't have any responsibility. That's the third benefit to seller financing to sellers, is they don't have any responsibility. Now, here's the scenario. When you hear a seller on the phone, they're saying, hey, I was hoping to fix this house up. I was hoping to rent this house out. I was hoping to make it an investment for my family. When you hear a seller say that, that means that they have some kind of money knowledge. They have some kind of hope that they're gonna get to some kind of financial freedom, okay? That should trigger you to seller financing, okay? When they say, well, but I couldn't find the money to get it up, but I'm having a hard time making payments, but whatever, I couldn't do that, you should go to seller financing as their option, because that seller can now get their goal of cash flow with no responsibility. Whenever they sell the property to you, you're the owner now, they're the mortgage. The mortgage does not have to worry about toilets, does not have to worry about heaters, does not have to worry about flooring. The mortgage company simply gets their principal back and their interest. That's it. That's it. They have no responsibility and they still hold control. So they hold control, but they have no responsibility to the property. So that is a huge benefit. It's a huge benefit to the seller. Because if the seller wants to keep the property, they now have to pay property taxes, they got to pay for maintenance, they got to pay for water, they got to pay for contractors. There's so many other responsibilities, but simply by them moving to the mortgage position on the house, they still keep control without no responsibility. And one other tip that you'll hear on the phone when you're talking to sellers, who are interested in selling their property, you'll know that they will be good for seller financing if they mention that they don't need the money. Okay, here's what I mean, and this is how you can actually say it. So when a seller says, hey, look, I need $100,000, I typically joke with the seller. I get loud, I get a high-pitched voice, and I say, man, what you gonna do with this money? And it sounds like comical and it's joking. If you say it in like a down tone, it'll sound like demeaning. But if you say it high pitched and loud, it's a joke. And typically they'll say, well, I'm gonna pay off some cards, or I'm just gonna put it in the bank and save it. Anytime that they say that they don't have an immediate place for that money to go, mention the benefits of seller financing, and I promise that person will be open. Because if they say, hey, I'm just gonna put it in the bank, or I'm gonna put it in my 401k, or I'm gonna, give it to my children, then seller financing is the best option for that seller, okay? Now, I hope you guys can understand some of the benefits. There's definitely more. Some of the benefits for seller financing, and I hope you guys can understand how to use it in a negotiation, okay? If you guys have ever done a deal where the seller carries the mortgage note, drop a flame down in the comments, or even tell your story so that way we all can learn, earn, and grow together. Look, you guys have an amazing day. Peace.